Have you ever noticed that the most dangerous men rarely boast? That the most coveted don't need to chase after what they want? That true leaders don't shout orders, they simply exist, and the world bows down? Modern society has become accustomed to noise, to self-affirmation, to the hysteria of those who shout, "Look at me." But the real game, the game of seduction, of value, of influence, is silent. This man didn't say anything. He didn't ask for attention. He simply is. And yet, it's as if the air around him changes density. He's the kind of man you talk about, even discreetly, who awakens desire, even in those who didn't want to feel it. The question few dare to ask is, why does this happen? We live surrounded by good, hard-working, polite men, but completely forgettable. They hold doors open, share funny memes, offer sympathy and convenience. They are good neighbors, good sons, good professionals. But they are also the first to be ignored, discarded, disregarded. Not because something is lacking in what they do, but because there is a lack of intensity in who they are. The tragedy is silent. Men who spend years being what society says they should be, and yet they don't receive the gaze of the woman they desire, the respect of the environment where they live, nor the impact they believe they deserve. It's cruel, but it's real. Being good isn't enough. Being fair isn't magnetic. Being correct, unfortunately, isn't seductive. Domesticated masculinity has created generations of harmless and invisible men. This video isn't about picking up women, it's about something much more powerful: presence, desire, silent reputation. It's about becoming a man who doesn't need to introduce himself because his name already circulates on street corners, the one whose absence is noticed. The one who imposes without threatening, who seduces without promising, who attracts without begging. It's not about noise, but about density. What you are, without needing to speak. And the question that really matters isn't how to conquer everyone, but how to become impossible to ignore for those who matter. The science of desire is brutal. It doesn't reward effort. It reacts to tension, to unpredictability, to contrast. The human mind is driven by stimuli that defy logic and predictability. A desirable man isn't the most perfect, but the one who stirs people's emotional core, the one who represents risk or possibility. Nietzsche said that what moves us is not truth, but the will to power. And that is precisely why desire is never neutral. It is force. It is movement. It is influence. And you need to decide if you want to be an active agent in this dynamic, or just another immobile piece at the bottom of the board. He grew up hearing that he needed to be kind. That respect was the foundation of everything. That women like men who listen, who help, who are trustworthy. And he believed it, strongly, honestly, with almost childlike faith. He learned to open doors, not to interrupt, to say sorry even when he wasn't at fault. And for a while he thought he was winning. After all, everyone said he was a nice guy. His female friends confided secrets in him. His neighbors smiled and said he was a respectable man. But deep down, very deep down, he knew. He knew something was wrong. Because while he gave his best, eyes wandered to another kind of man. A kind who didn't smile so much, who didn't say yes to everything. A kind who seemed to have something dark, something uncontrollable, and precisely for that reason, irresistible. The nice guy is a cultural trap, a product polished by centuries of male domestication. He is polite, but predictable, gentle but uninteresting, confident but without tension. He tries to conquer with good intentions, without realizing that when it comes to desire, intention is worthless. Seduction demands risk, and all risk demands contrast. There's only tension when there is a pull you don't control, an energy you can't decipher. The agreeable man, by always trying to please, dissolves his own mystery. And where there is no mystery, there is no fascination. He becomes transparent as glass and as exciting as a white wall. This is not just a subjective perception. Evolutionary psychology explains this phenomenon precisely. The female mind, and in general the human social instinct, seeks signs of reproductive and social value not only in what is said but mainly in what is felt. The man who doesn't set limits, who is always available, who is predictable in every gesture, sends a single signal. He is not sought after. He has no options. He is confident because he is uninteresting. And the brain, at an unconscious level, reacts with indifference. The nice guy is the behavioral equivalent of a bland food. It's okay, but nobody wants it. There's a subtle illusion behind constant friendliness. the idea that always being kind is morally superior. But then comes the first brutal contradiction. Desire doesn't obey morality. It responds to an instinctive hierarchy. And in this hierarchy, the man who occupies space, who imposes his presence, who challenges, even subtly, dominates the emotional field. This doesn't mean the jerk wins. The jerk, most of the time, also loses. But he at least activates some emotion. The agreeable man, in contrast, activates nothing. And the absence of emotion is the death of attraction. Want a clear image of this? Think of Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother. Romantic, dedicated, polite. But throughout the entire series, he is rejected by the women he most desires. Why? Because Ted represents the rational ideal of a relationship, but not the irrational instinct of desire. Now think of Don Draper from Mad Men. A silent, intense man who rarely explains himself. Morally questionable? Perhaps. But seductive enough to attract attention simply with a cigarette in his hand. Don represents the archetype of mystery, tension, and symbolic power that the agreeable man abandoned in the name of acceptance. The root of the trap lies in the confusion between approval and attraction. The agreeable man seeks approval. He wants to hear that he's a good guy. He expects emotional rewards for his kindness. But desire doesn't reward those who wait. It responds to those who impose. And imposition here isn't violence or rudeness. It's presence. It's magnetism. It's identity. When you enter an environment trying to be approved, you automatically put yourself below them. Your gaze says, I hope they like me. Your body language pleads, I'm not a threat. Your tone of voice betrays, I accept any attention that comes. And this is perceived even unconsciously as weakness. And weakness in an environment where scarcity and value are the pillars of desire is not a virtue. It's silent repulsion. The philosopher Ortega y Gasset said that love is born from surrender to fascination. That is, before there is affection, there must be enchantment. And for there to be enchantment, there must be something out of the ordinary, something that imposes itself. The agreeable man tries to conquer through the ordinary, and that's why he doesn't conquer. He fits in so well that he disappears. He pleases so much that he loses his shape. He tries so hard to be accepted that he forgets to be desired. He's like that pleasant background music in a restaurant, present but invisible. If it stops playing, someone might notice the silence, but no one will remember the melody. All this doesn't mean you should become a jerk. The nice guy or jerk dichotomy is childish. The real alternative is another. Stop being predictable. Stop being reactive. Take control of your energy. A desirable man isn't the one who pleases everyone. It's the one who challenges many, who attracts by contrast, who imposes presence, who refuses to be neutral. A pleasant man acts so as not to bother. A magnetic man acts because he has a mission, and the environment adjusts to his presence, not the other way around. That's the key. You shouldn't act to please. You should act to position yourself. When your language, your actions, your way of speaking, and even your silence are consistent with a strong inner axis, you become a reference point. People don't just like you. They orbit around you. And that's the first step to becoming desirable, abandoning the addiction to acceptance. The agreeable man is often a man who fears rejection. He believes that if he's always polite, he'll never hear no. But he ignores a harsher truth. Emotional neutrality is the biggest no. Being ignored is worse than being rejected. And that's exactly what happens to the nice guys who haven't learned to use tension, contrast, mystery. They are ignored. Not because they failed, but because they were never truly seen. And the most ironic thing? When this man tries to change, he usually does so abruptly, in a caricatured way. He tries to become alpha overnight. He feigns arrogance. He copies cliches. He imitates idols of fake masculinity. But he remains insecure inside. Because he hasn't understood the core of the issue. Desire isn't about what you say. It's about what you emanate. And the energy of a pleasant man, even when he tries to act confident, is the energy of someone who still asks permission to exist. If you want to become the most desired man in your neighborhood, the first step isn't improving your smile, nor buying better clothes, nor memorizing jokes. It's stopping trying to please. It's understanding that desire is born from contrast. That being admired is less about being correct and more about being unforgettable. And nobody remembers the guy who tried to please everyone. But everyone remembers the one who even silent commanded respect, who even with the smallest gesture provoked tension, who even effortlessly was present. Have you ever stopped to think about what your absence communicates when you pass by a place and nobody notices? When you get on an elevator and nobody gives you a second glance? When you walk through the neighborhood and seem like part of the landscape, like a lamppost, a sign, or any other car? What's at stake here isn't just ego, it's perception, it's reputation, it's the space you occupy in the collective imagination. And the most brutal thing about all this is, while you live on autopilot, the world is reading you. It's labeling you. It's silently deciding who you are and what you're worth, even if you don't say a single word. That's the real cost of invisibility. You're not just being ignored, you're being classified as irrelevant. And that classification shapes how people behave around you. It determines whether they will respect you, follow you, desire you, or just tolerate you. The biggest mistake a man can make is to believe that silence is neutral. It isn't. Silence also communicates. And when silence is accompanied by an absence of presence, by collapsed body language, by a gaze that apologizes for existing, the message the world receives is clear. This man doesn't have high social value. He may be nice, he may be fair, he may even be good, but he is not perceived as a role model, and therefore he is not desired. Social psychology calls this unconscious priming. The human mind, to save energy, creates mental shortcuts that quickly classify everything around us. You don't think rationally about every person you meet. You feel, you pick up clues. You read nonverbal signals and organize your emotional hierarchy based on these stimuli. What does this mean? That by presenting yourself to the world passively, you activate unconscious triggers of devaluation in others. The absence of intensity generates an interpretation of weakness, and weakness in a competitive world full of stimuli is ignored. Invisibility is not accidental. It is the direct result of codes you emit all the time, even without realizing it. Do you want a clear example? Observe how women react when a man enters a room with an upright posture, a calm gaze, firm steps, but without haste. He doesn't speak loudly, he doesn't smile excessively, but he carries something. A weight, a density. He doesn't need to be handsome, but it's impossible to ignore him. Now observe the opposite. The man who enters hunched over, looking down, positioning himself on the edges, avoiding eye contact. Women don't react with hatred, nor with disgust. They react with nothing. It's as if he doesn't exist. And what hurts isn't the rejection, it's the neutrality. Because neutrality is the silent sentence that you have no impact. Social life is a game of narrative. And yours is being told, with or without your active participation. What do your neighbors think of you? What do the people in your building feel when you appear? Are you remembered? Are you talked about? Do you generate expectation? Or do you simply pass by? Worse than being talked about badly is not being talked about at all. In this age of overexposure, where everyone desperately tries to attract attention, those who are truly desired don't shout. They dominate the environment with an energy that precedes words. They are perceived before they are noticed. And you? What has your silence been communicating? The French philosopher Jean Baudrillard said that we live in an era where signs have replaced reality. In other words, what matters is not who you are, but what you represent. And here's the cruel irony. You can be an incredible man, with noble values and unwavering character. But if your public image doesn't carry symbolic weight, you'll be discarded in the first unconscious filter. The woman in the building might recognize you as a good neighbor, but she won't fantasize about you. The condo group might respect you for your good neighborliness, but they'll never see you as a leader, because you presented yourself as an accessory, not as a reference. And this is where a dangerous psychological distortion comes in. The invisible man, instead of reacting with action, often reacts with resentment. He becomes passive-aggressive. He starts to hate the men who generate desire. He starts to blame the world, his appearance, his status, as if everything were unfair. But this reaction is childish. Because the root of the problem isn't what the world does to you, it's what you're not doing to the world. Desire is an active game. Either you learn to activate the right stimuli, or you'll remain just background noise in the urban landscape. And here's one of the hardest truths in this video. Invisibility makes you disposable in every sense. Socially, emotionally, and even sexually. The woman who might have been interested in you doesn't even consider the possibility. The neighbor who could respect you never considered you an authority figure. The group that could follow you doesn't even know your name. Because while you worry about not bothering others, other men are shaping powerful narratives about themselves. And these narratives generate reputation. Reputation generates conversations, and conversations generate myths. Do you think desire is born from a pretty picture? Desire is born from social mythology. And mythology only exists around figures that impose impact. Robert Greene, in The Art of Seduction, talks about the anti-seducer. He describes the man who is needy, predictable, without aura. The man who talks too much, over-explains, overshows himself. This man, according to Greene, not only repels but exhausts. And the saddest thing is that many invisible men today are not like that for lack of value, but for excessive explanation. They try to justify themselves so much, show so much, prove so much that they lose the mystery. And without mystery, there is no fascination. Desire is born from what has not yet been fully revealed. The man who exposes himself excessively, who gives himself away without being provoked, who appears too much, dissolves his own mystique. What you need to understand is that reputation is built indirectly. You don't conquer by being the guy who tries to be seen. You conquer by being the man who generates impact, even when he's not present. The one who is mentioned in conversations, who leaves traces, who leaves a mark. The man who disappears without anyone noticing was already absent even before leaving. Want to regain your visibility? Start with density. Reduce your words and increase your weight. Enter environments with intention. When you are with other people, speak less and with more rhythm. Beware of empty smiles. Take care of your posture, of your silence, of your gaze, of what you communicate when you're not trying to communicate anything. Because that's where true power lies. What you are when you're not performing. If you've understood what's been said so far, perhaps you'll begin to see the men who are truly desirable with new eyes. They aren't always smiling, they aren't always friendly, but they have something you feel, something that makes you look twice, that makes you listen when they speak, that makes you remember them after they're gone. And this isn't magic, it's behavioral engineering. It's applied social psychology, it's consciously projected energy, and this can be learned, internalized, incorporated. But it demands a price. You need to kill the invisible man within yourself. I conclude this chapter with an invitation to honesty. Ask yourself now, when was the last time someone was intrigued by you? When did someone fantasize about you? When did someone see you and comment on you to someone else? If it's been too long, the answer is clear. You're not playing the game of presence, you're just existing. And those who merely exist leave no legacy. The first thing you need to understand is that an aura isn't created, it's revealed. Every man already carries within himself a raw magnetic field. The problem is that almost all sabotage this power with excessive words, justifications, and a silent desperation for approval. They try to force charisma instead of activating it. They try to imitate authority figures instead of becoming them. Aura is the opposite of effort. It's what remains when you remove everything unnecessary. When you silence the need to be accepted. When you stop trying to convince and start exercising. The most powerful seduction is the one that happens without you saying a word. Because it doesn't come from your mouth, it comes from your rhythm. From the time between the look and the speech. From the way you enter a room and impose a slowdown around you. The average man tries to adapt to the speed of others. The desired man forces the environment to slow down to keep up with him. This isn't arrogance. It's energetic mastery. It's inner mastery overflowing in every gesture. Want to know if a man is respected? Observe how he walks down a narrow hallway. If others give way, he didn't ask. But he's already in control. This aura is born from a behavioral tripod that few understand. Presence, mystery, and positioning. Presence is when your energy fills the space before your words. Mystery is when your expression says less than you really think, and therefore invites projection. Positioning is when your decisions, your gaze, and your language reveal that you are centered, that you know who you are, and that no one outside of you has authority over that. When these three elements align, a rare phenomenon is born. You are no longer a body, You are a field. Most ordinary men deliver the opposite of this tripod. They lack presence because they live distracted, with erratic movements, irregular breathing, and a lost gaze. They lack mystery because they verbalize everything, opine on everything, and express every emotion in real time. And they lack a stance because they yield to the slightest social pressure. They say yes when they want to say no. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny just to maintain a certain atmosphere. They are too readable, too controllable, too ordinary. Therefore, the first step to building an uncontrollable aura is to practice what I call dense silence. It's not about staying silent. It's about speaking when you want to, not when the environment demands it. It's about reducing the volume to increase the impact. It's about knowing that the value of what you say depends on the tension you generate before speaking. The most magnetic men you know don't talk too much. They speak correctly, and sometimes their silence says more than entire speeches from others. The second step is the gaze. The gaze is the gateway to your energy. Ordinary men look away, glance too quickly, or stare aggressively to compensate for insecurity. Desired men have a gaze that alternates between intensity and lightness, that stares without intimidating, that communicates calm but also judgment. A gaze that observes, not begs, that examines, not waits. The secret lies in the intention behind the gaze. If you look to seek approval, you place yourself below. If you look to explore and understand, you position yourself above. Third step, slowing down. Rhythm is everything. Anxiety communicates itself through the accelerated rhythm of speech, gestures, and breathing. Confidence communicates itself through conscious slowness. When you speak slowly, walk with mastery, gesture with control, you transmit an ancestral security. It's the same pattern as tribal leaders, silent kings, men who don't need to prove themselves. They master time, and this affects everything around them. The desired woman, the real one, doesn't react to verbosity. She reacts to presence. And presence is always rhythmic. There's an ancient technique used by theatrical actors called stage control. Before going on stage, they practice micro-behaviors that radiate authority, aligning shoulders, regulating breathing, creating intention in their walk, positioning their hands symbolically. With each movement, there is a choice. Nothing is random. The same principle should be applied to your daily life. When you walk through the market, how do you walk? How do you hold your bags? How do you react when you make eye contact with someone? Do you smile automatically, or do you merely observe and respond after gauging the energy? Do you walk as a spectator of reality, or as an unsung protagonist? Aura begins in small rituals, in the smallest gestures, in the invisible details that the world perceives, even if you don't notice them. She doesn't want a man who loses himself in her. She wants a man who makes her lose herself in him. And that only happens when you understand the invisible game that governs desire. When you stop trying to please, when you step out of the position of value tester and become the one who sets the emotional pace of the relationship. You don't need to be more handsome or richer. You just need to learn to control what other men give away for free, their own energy. Because the man who masters his own behavior masters attraction. And that's not theory, that's psychology. That's strategy. And if you felt all this makes sense, if you realize the mistakes you've been making, and if you want practical access to the map that transforms this awareness into action, then the next step is inevitable. Listen now to the audiobook The Forbidden Manual, How to Trigger Desire in 60 Seconds. This is not just another generic seduction piece. It's a strategic, tested, straightforward system that teaches you what to say, how to act, how to create presence, mystery, and tension in less than 1 minute of interaction. All condensed into an audiobook that you can listen to repeatedly until these ideas are no longer just techniques, but part of your identity. What's at stake here isn't just winning over a woman. It's about mastering your own energy. And the man who masters that is never ignored again. Click now. Listen to The Forbidden Manual and become the one who doesn't chase, but the one she chases so as not to lose.